Hey everybody, I'm Joe, thanks for joining me. I'm here tonight with a replay against Jeskai Aggro, a deck that Jeff Hoogland did pretty well with on day one at least of this past weekend's SCG Open. The idea behind the deck is, basically Mantis Rider is the spicy tech. One blue, one red, one white for a 3/3 flying Vigilance Haste. So he comes out, he's kind of like a lightning bolt, he flies over, it does 3, stays back as a blocker. Pretty solid card, but another neat innovation that Jeff is running in this deck is Mutagenic Growth, along with prowess creatures like Monastery Swiftspear and Storm Chaser Mage. Both of those guys, I think, have 2 or more toughness, so that when you play a Mutagenic Growth targeting them, their toughness gets outside of Lightning Bolt range. So in that way, Mutagenic Growth kind of acts like a mental misstep, being able to use Phyrexian mana to counter a Lightning Bolt, removing one of their creatures. So let's see, if Mutagenic Growth shows up in this match. Looking at the opening hands, you see the opponent's got 4 lands, little land heavy, but they do have a Serum Visions. They get to scry to some better cards. Lightning Helix and Mantis Rider, excellent cards. But like I said, a little land heavy. The opponent won the die roll, so he's going to be on the play. I've got 3 lands myself. Unfortunately, AEther Vial's not loading the image for some reason. I reinstalled Cockatrice. It just seems to be a problem right now. Don't know what's going on with that. Silvergill and Harbinger, Vapor Snag. Solid opening hand, can't complain. I think a keep for both players. Opponent's thinking about it, and they do keep. So open with one of the new Kaladesh Fastland, Spire Bluff Canal. Enables some of these blue-red aggressive strategies. Serum Visions, looks like they drew them into another land, and then they put a Mesa on the bottom and a Serum Visions, I don't think we know what the card is that they left on top of their library. Anyhow, I drew a 4th land, not amazing, but for my first turn, I'm going to go ahead and play Oboro and AEther Vial. Opponent draws a Gitaxian Probe. Not as useful as it could be at this point. It's not going to get any prowess triggers for them, but it cycles, and they get to see what I'm working with. So let's keep this information down here so we remember what they know about. Off of the Gitaxian Probe, it looks like he hit his 5th land. Some crazy draws right now. I see Seachrome Coast and pass of the turn. So I draw into another Harbinger of the Tide. AEther Vial goes up to 1. I think Silvergill is probably the play here. Although, I didn't know what I was playing against at this point. So I didn't want to play a Silvergill into counter magic, and no point in playing a Harbinger yet. I don't know what I'm going up against, and a Harbinger could prove to be very valuable bouncing a creature. So I've got AEther Vial taking up to 2 soon. It looks like with whatever the opponent's doing, I have some time to wait. I can play Silvergill off the AEther Vial in a little while. As it was, I just representing counter magic of my own or potentially Vapor Snag. So this is sort of remarkable. The opponent has just hit land so far, apart from his card draw spells. I think we are going to see Mantis Rider trying to get in for 3, but I've got the Vapor Snag that the opponent knew about. So I'm going to use that right now. Opponent takes 1 damage from the Vapor Snag, and pretty decent. Save 3 damage by waiting on the Silvergill. So knowing that he's got the Mantis Rider at this point, the Harbingers are going to be a little bit less useful. They can do some damage as bodies. I'm going to start by tapping the Mutavault and the Oboro, revealing a Harbinger the opponent already knows about. Now, hitting a Reejerey makes things a little bit different, because Harbinger, cast with a Reejerey on the board, can tap and bounce a Mantis Rider. So I think the hand just got a decent amount better by drawing into the Reejerey. So nothing else to do this turn. I'll play out a 3rd land and pass back to the opponent with AEther Vial on 2, having access to Harbinger to bounce something or just to put in as a body to attack with. Important to note that with AEther Vial on 2 and Reejerey in hand, I can take AEther Vial up to 3, and then cast Harbingers to tap and bounce his Mantis Rider on my next turn. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable in this spot. Opponent draws another land. That's pretty wacky at this point. Attacks for 3 with the Mantis Rider. Going to bring in a Harbinger here as a body. Want to start applying pressure. I am going to tick AEther Vial up to 3. Drew an Island Walk Lord. So things are looking pretty good on our side. Pretty poor on the opponent's side, I have to say. But, the video is useful to show you guys a little bit, at least, about, what this new Jeskai Aggro deck is all about. This is the only time I've played against it. Just happens that they drew 6 lands or something like that. So here's the Reejerey. I'm going to reveal a Harbinger and cast a Harbinger. Tap his Mantis Rider and just activate an attack with Mutavault, I think, here. So it looks like 3, 3, and 3, 9, taking the opponent from 17 down to 8. Yeah, and it's going to be pretty hard for them to get out of this one, I think. At the end of their turn, they... let me pause for a sec. What did they crack here? Cracked a Flooded Strand and got a Sacred Foundry, and then just showed me all the lands that they drew. So that was game 1. Sometimes we draw crazy like that. Let's see how game 2 went. On the draw, this is potentially a keep. Opponent's got 2 lands, Probe, Swift Spear, Mantis Rider, Snapcaster Mage, another Probe. Probably a keep on their side. They've got plenty of prowess triggers here with the Gitaxian Probe. For my side of things, if I draw into a blue source, my hand is immediately turned on, so I think I keep here, being on the draw. We're going to see Probe. Opponent knows my hand. And let's see what they draw. Drew a Lightning Bolt. It's pretty good in this matchup. I think we might see another Probe while he's at it. Draws into a 3rd land, solid for playing Mantis Rider. And I take 3 off the Swift Spear. And immediately hit my 2nd land, so things are going pretty well for me. Play out the Cursecatcher. Opponent draws a Serum Visions. Going to lead with the Spire Bluff Canal, playing Serum Vision. They draw into another Lightning Bolt, looking at the top 2. And let me pause for a sec. Looks like Storm Chaser Mage got moved to the bottom, and Lightning Bolt stayed on the top. So we're going to see an attack here for 2, with the Monastery Swift Spear having been buffed once by the Prowess trigger from the Serum Visions. So I drew into a 3rd land, so it's an excellent keep on my side. For my turn, I may have been a little greedy here, not thinking that this Swift Spear is a huge deal. Potentially missed up. I think I was also waiting for the Mantis Rider to show up to lock that guy down. Wanting to get ahead a little bit on cards here, so use the Silvergill Adept to draw another card, and hopefully we can keep hitting some lands to keep us moving fluidly. Opponent hits a 3rd Lightning Bolt. That's probably bad news for us. Okay, hastily went to combat and then is going to think better of it. No reason not to get the Mantis Rider out here, I think. So there it is. They take 2 for the Hallowed Fountain and just swing for 4 here. I could have blocked and traded with the Swift Spear, which, watching this again, might not have been the worst play. We're not building up to a Master of Waves right now. We don't have the land, and we don't have a Master of Waves in hand. We do have a Tidebinder Mage to shut down his Mantis Rider. Maybe it would have been better, since this is such an aggressive deck, to block and trade with the Swift Spear while the opponent's shields were down. In the end, I think why I didn't block really was the threat of mutagenic growth. I haven't seen it yet, but I know that at least the version that Jeff Hoogland played this past weekend runs, I think, 4 mutagenic growths to save these creatures from Lightning Bolt. So it would have been a big blowout if the opponent cast a mutagenic growth in response. They could have even put the mutagenic growth on the Mantis Rider if I blocked. Swift Spear would have gotten to a 2/3 just from a prowess trigger and would have eaten my Silvergill Adept. So I just take 4 here. Not a bad choice, I think, to not block. But ultimately, with 3 Lightning Bolts in hand, this hand is a little bit too spicy for me. So Cavern here, we're going to want access to blue sources. Going to tap down that Mantis Rider. Swing for 3. Again, probably more aggressive than I needed to be. No way for us to know that they have 3 lightning bolts. Mantis Rider is going to stay tapped. Now this Swift Spear attacks, and do you guys block in this spot? I feel like most of the time you're not going to block. Who puts their opponent on 3 lightning bolts? Now if he has, let's say, a mutagenic growth and a lightning bolt, right? He can go to my face and mutagenic growth. So that's 2 prowess triggers plus 2 from the mutagenic growth. So this guy would be a 4/5. Lightning bolt to the face takes me to 7. I'm still at 3. His creatures are tapped down. I could play potentially, if I draw an island, I could play 2 Island Walks, Island Walk Lords. These guys would be, 4, 4, and 3. That would be lethal. If I just play 1 Lord next turn, it's 3, 3, and 2 for 8. Probably not getting there that way. But yeah, I chose not to block ultimately, and got punished for it. Opponent goes for a triple lightning bolt, and that'll pretty much do it most times, right? When you get to the mid game, you're being a little careful with your life total, trying to play around whatever they could have, and then all of a sudden 3 lightning bolts. So that was game 2. Didn't draw as many lands that game. My hand looks excellent. I've got 2 Tidebinders to lock down Mantises, Spreading Seas. I think I kept like 2 of these in just because it was like, an okay card. Can turn Island Walk online and take them off of one of their colors. Kira, great for protecting against the spot removal, can also block Mantis Rider in a pinch. And Master of Waves if we draw enough lands. Definitely a keep on my side. Opponent's got 4 lands, 2 removal spells, and a Serum Vision. Not the strongest hand, but probably a keep, right? If you remove one of these lands, this is an easy keep at 6. So it has to probably be a reluctant keep at 7. Being on the play is huge this game because I can choose to lead with Spreading Seas or Tidebinder depending on what the opponent plays. We see that they hit a Mantis Rider on their first draw step. They're going to open with Serum Visions here, drawing into a Swift Spear. Looking at the 2, they're going to put a Flooded Strand on the bottom, and I don't think we know what the other card is. I had a Cursecatcher, a little awkward with the sequencing. Not going to bring the Tidebinders out yet because there's lots of live targets against this deck. I'm going to try to take them off of this red mana. And I drew another Spreading Seas, so potentially slow them down a little bit more. See a Swift Spear. What is the opponent going to go with here? Well, this did slow them down a little bit. They could have run out 2 Swift Spears if we didn't drop that Spreading Seas. As I mentioned, I think there are only 2 Spreading Seas in the deck at this point, so I happen to draw into both of them. Swift Spear just getting in for 1. Opponent doesn't even have mana to cast Lightning Bolt and get a Prowess trigger. So I had an AEther Vial. Opponent's development looks pretty slow here. But I do have a chance. I don't think this deck runs too many lands. It is an aggressive deck with a low curve. And I have a chance to slow their mana down even further, and potentially hit a land to get AEther Vial going. If I don't hit the land, I still have another chance next turn, and I have Tidebinders to slow them down even further. So I think the plan here was to run out my card draw spell, slow down their mana even more. I magically drew into that 3rd land right on time, and we'll get that AEther Vial out onto the table. Opponent has to feel pretty backed up here. Now, they can run out their Seachrome Coast here, but then with access only to white and blue mana this turn, they're only going to have Vapor Snag, which they just top-decked online. They won't have red mana with Seachrome Coast to play Lightning Bolt. They certainly won't have access to red and white to play Lightning Helix. They definitely don't have red, white, and blue to cast Mantis Rider. They could play out their Flooded Strand instead, but then Seachrome Coast comes in next turn tapped, which is kind of a bummer. So let's see which direction they chose to go with their land this turn. We do see the Flooded Strand. It's possible they'll draw into a different land, which will come in untapped next turn. So seems like potentially the right call here. I mean, my game has been super slow so far, but I do have this Master Waves in hand, so getting these Spreading Seas on the board, part of that strategy was definitely having access to the Master Waves. I think, unless I just top decked that guy. No, I think I had that guy in hand when I played the Spreading Seas. I did, because then off the Spreading Seas I drew this land. Opponent's getting a Sacred Foundry, going to run out their second Swift Spear and just attack for 2. I go from 19 all the way down to 17, so these Spreading Seas doing a great job slowing the opponent down. AEther Vial is going to go up to 1. I draw into a Cursecatcher. So I can get a lot of devotion onto the board right now. Kira seems like an excellent option since we can turn the opponent's spot removal off, or at least slow it down quite a bit. So play Kira and leave Aether Vial up on 1 to bring in a Cursecatcher, potentially surprise the opponent. They drew into Stormchaser Mage. They can use some of my blue mana to play that guy. It's pretty nice. Seachrome Coast is going to come in tapped, though. Again, a little bit clunky. Let's see which direction they chose to go. Red and blue for Stormchaser Mage with flying and haste. Going to attack with these 3 dudes. They could very well have an instant spell to buff these guys, so definitely not going to block. Take 3, go from 17 down to 14, and we'll see if the opponent has a follow-up. Does. He has tap Seachrome Coast, and I'm going to try to activate my Aether Vial. On the end step, the opponent says it's okay, and there he is. So Aether Vial goes up to 2, which is excellent for these Tidebinder Mages. Extra excellent with my 4th land and Master of Waves, so I think I'm just going to main phase all this stuff. Second main phase. So attack for 3, activate Aether Vial, lock down the flying Stormchaser Mage, play a land, play a Master of Waves, and how many tokens is that? 8,000, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 elementals. And with Kira on the board, opponent has to be feeling pretty jammed up here. Draws a 5th land. They have a pretty great hand, but we've done a great job playing a pretty controlling game post-sideboard here. You know, with small adjustments, just basically Tidebinder Mage. I did bring in a 2nd Kira from the sideboard. Opponent finally has access to Mantis Rider mana, but that's not going to get him there this turn. You have to tap blue, white, and red, or I guess, yeah, blue, white, and red, leaving up Vapor Snag. He could also play, you know, Bolt on the Master of Waves. It would get countered. Actually, you know what? I don't even think they can do that because he's just not a legal target. So they can't cast Bolt first at all on Master of Waves. So I don't really think there's any way they can deal with the Master of Waves here. They could, actually no, I'll take that back. They have one way and one way only, I think, to deal with Master of Waves right now. They could tap for red, red here. No, wait, they only have 1 red right now. So they need to get another red. They can Bolt and Helix the Kira, and then Vapor Snag the Master of Waves. That leaves the Stormchaser Mage tapped down with the Tidebinder. It would give 3 prowess triggers to these Swift Spears, so they'd be swinging for 8 damage, which is pretty massive. As it was, I think the opponent just misplayed. They try to Vapor Snag the Master of Waves, get really greedy, and then try to Lightning Bolt him. So, you know, in games like this, I have no problem letting my opponent take back plays like that. So I said, do you want to switch? He said, good game. Like, I mean, if he cast Lightning Bolt first, as I mentioned, it's actually an illegal target. So it's just an illegal play. It would get rewound, and the spell would go back to his hand. So as I mentioned, they would have to deal with Kira first, and the only way to do that would be to get a 2nd red mana source, Bolt the Kira, and then Lightning Helix it with land, and then land. Use this one to Vapor Snag the Master. I'd be left with a Tidebinder. I would take something, like I said, 8 damage from these Swift Spears, go down to 6. I would probably leave the Tidebinder up in the event that he plays out the Mantis Rider, but I'd have that live to bring in, to top down one of the Swift Spears at the least. His hand would be empty, except for the Mantis Rider, after taking that line. So he might have just drawn into more lands. I would still have a Master of Waves to replay, actually. So that would be the play next turn. If he managed to Vapor Snag the Master of Waves, I would just recast that guy, leave up Aether Vial for... actually, probably the play is to bring in Tidebinder Mage, main phase again. But, I don't know what I would do, actually. I probably would hedge, just getting fewer tokens and leaving Tidebinder Mage in the event of a Mantis Rider. These Swiftspears by themselves are not a huge threat, especially after the opponent would have had to expend 3 different instant spells. So the opponent, rather than backing it up and choosing a different line, chose to scoop it up at that point. So maybe this guy's not playing those mutagenic growths that I kept mentioning. We didn't see any even in his hand the entire match. I happen to be a big fan of this deck. I think it has a lot of room for improvement. Stormchaser Mage is a powerful card, and it just seems like a shell with Lightning Helix, Lightning Bolt, and Vapor Snag. Potentially Mutagenic Growth is a great way to use this guy to his fullest potential. So let me know if you guys have seen this deck in the wild yet. Did you happen to watch the matches from the SEG Open this past weekend? You know, what were your impressions? Let me know what you thought about my lines this game, all my plays, all the opponent's plays. And yeah, that's it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks as always.